What is up, y'all? It's your girl Evelyn, and today we are openly discussing Taylor Swift's sexuality. I'm just kidding. But we are going to talk about that controversial New York Times op ed that did openly discuss Taylor Swift's sexuality. We're also going to be talking about the allegedly shocking love scene from the upcoming film Love Lies Bleeding. We've also got some Mean Girls news. We've got some Last of Us news. We've got vulvas on dresses and so much more on this episode of Queerest, she said. So we have to start with Taylor Swift, which is something I never thought I would be saying on this podcast, but here we are. For those of you who have no idea what I'm talking about, a couple of weeks ago, the New York Times published this op-ed about Taylor Swift, and then the internet exploded. I mean, the reactions to this article were all over the place. Some people loved it and praised it. Some people condemned it and thought it was just awful. It's basically a laundry list of all of the perceived and overt Sapphic, gay, queer things Taylor has done throughout her career, whether it's certain lyrics, using certain pronouns or not using certain pronouns, imagery, colors. But the main point of the article seems to be, at least to me, we don't know for sure that Taylor Swift is queer, but also Taylor Swift is probably queer, and here's why. Now, I'll be honest, before I read this article, I cared very little about Taylor Swift's personal life. After reading this article, I probably care even less. Look, I am of the camp that maybe we as a society don't need to publish 5,000 word op-eds trying to prove that certain people are gay or straight or whatever. Like, maybe let's not do that. Also, there are like 6 or 7 paragraphs in this article that, if expanded on, in my opinion, would have made a far more interesting read. Like celebrity coming out in general, the cultural expectations of coming out, what do gay people owe to each other, if anything, when it comes to representation and coming out, the desire for queer celebrity heroes, and what does that even say about us? That they have to look a certain way or be a certain way, how the societal sexual default is straight and how that affects the very fabric of coming out. Like, I would have loved to read an article exploring any of those themes or all of those themes, but what we got was essentially just a deep dive into all of the gay Easter eggs Taylor has laid throughout her career. I don't know, look, no matter where you stand about the op-ed, whether you liked it or hated it, I feel like something we can all agree on is maybe we should just take people at their word, right? Like, if someone has said, I am not a part of XYZ community, maybe don't write a 5,000 word New York Times op-ed about how they actually are a member of XYZ community. Because even if you're right, that person is either not ready or willing or whatever to publicly be a part of XYZ community. And that is not to say that we should speculate on celebrities' sexualities who don't make definitive statements about their sexuality, but I can at least understand that it's like, hey, I like this actor. I want this actor to play on my team. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel seen. I get that. I do it too, shit. But for someone who has said, this is not who I am, whether you believe them or not really shouldn't matter. Anywho, at the end of the day, hopefully this is the first and last time I ever talk about Taylor Swift on this podcast. So next up, we have some Mean Girls news, because not only is the movie out and apparently doing pretty well in the box office, but the video, the Reneé Rapp, Megan Thee Stallion video for Not My Fault has dropped. And if you watched or listened to the last podcast, you guys might remember the cover for the single. It depicted a lot of ass, right? Renee's entire ass was out. I thought it was fantastic. Like I said, it was beautiful and bootiful. And I liked the video. It was cute. But I have to say, I expected there to be just like slightly more ass just because of the cover. Not because I'm a degenerate, but the cover kind of made a promise of booty. But like I said, I like the video. And look, the booty you do see in the video is quite classy. And speaking of Mean Girls, we have to talk a little bit about Miss Reneé Rapp, who is currently on this Mean Girls press tour. Renee's like, what's a publicist? So she has given a lot of great interviews, but my favorite thing that she's doing in these interviews is just insisting that Regina George is a lesbian, despite the fact that in this movie, she most certainly is not. Like, she's not gay in the movie. But Reneé is insistent in these interviews that she's a lesbian, and it's the funniest thing ever. Renee's essentially like, she's a lesbian on the inside. I played her as a lesbian. therefore she's a lesbian. Is Reneé gaslighting everyone? I do think she is, but she's gaslighting everyone in a way that I can get behind. It's not like the May, December, Julianne Moore, Natalie Portman comments. I feel like Reneé is fully aware of her bullshit. And she just doesn't care. So, moving on to Love Lies Bleeding, that is Kristen Stewart's upcoming lesbian bodybuilding mafia movie, essentially. So, recently, Kristen did an interview, I think with Variety, about Love Lies Bleeding. And she talked a lot about the sexiness of the movie and how sexy, like, she personally found a lot of the scenes in the movie. So, I want to read what she said. Stewart told Variety that the film glorifies the things that I have found attractive and that it was really sexy. And I don't mean that from an outsider's perspective. I felt turned on by it, and it was cool to have people witness that. Though she kept her wording vague, Stewart was referring to the sex scenes in the movie, adding that one particular bathroom hookup is going to shock people. So, to paraphrase, Kristen basically said, there is a sex scene that takes place in a bathroom that is going to shock people. The thing is, I was already nervous about this movie because if you'll remember, the test audiences had visceral reactions to this movie because of the blood, the gore, and the vomit. And now Kristen is telling us that something sexy and shocking happens in a bathroom. It's almost like she doesn't want me to watch this movie because I can't. After vomit, the next thing that I can't do is bathroom stuff. Put it this way, if this sex scene includes the toilet, I'm praying that it's just for support. Like, remember that scene from The L Word with, I want to say it was Jenny and Carmen? Had sex on the toilet in the bathroom, obviously. Like, I think Jenny was like peeing and Carmen just well, you know what she did. Anyway, that's fine. That I can handle. And who knows, maybe the bathroom is just the setting, right? It might not have anything to do with what makes the scene shocking, right? Like maybe the scene could take place anywhere. It just so happens to take place in a bathroom. Maybe it's just the setting. Because if I hear one more nasty thing about this movie, I'm not watching it. So this week we do have a few quick pieces of good gay news. The first is I want to congratulate Mrs. Niecey Nash Betts for winning her very first Emmy the other night. She won it for that deeply disturbing Jeffrey Dahmer Netflix series. She was so good in it. Niecey fully deserved to win. Like, her character was the only one that actually made me cry during that series. Also, she looked amazing. She had this very elegant black dress on. Not to objectify Niecey, but Niecey has that Jessica Rabbit bust. She just does. Our next piece of quick good gay news is Arcane dropped a season 2 teaser, and it looks like season 2 will be out in November of this year. Arcane, possibly my favorite animated series of all time. Now, unfortunately, Caitlin and Vi were not in the teaser, but still, I'm just excited that the show is coming back this year. I can't wait. If you have not watched season 1 of Arcane and you are the slightest bit of an animation fan, please watch it. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It's a beautiful, beautiful show. It's gay, and hopefully season 2 will be even gayer. Speaking of exceptionally well-made video game adaptations, we have some potential good news from The Last of Us. So there has been some recent speculation and talk of a potential Last of Us spinoff centering on Bill and Frank, who are a gay couple in the show, and they starred in what was, in my opinion at least, not only the best episode of the series, but also the most heartbreaking episode of the series. It was so good. But the speculation comes from Nick Offerman himself. He plays Bill in the show. He basically revealed they have pitched an entire miniseries spinoff, so hopefully something comes from that. I would love to see it. I would definitely watch it. And last piece of good gay news, I have to give a shout out to Gillian Anderson's Golden Globes vulva covered dress. Yes, Gillian Anderson wore a dress to the Golden Globes covered in vulvas. It was gorgeous. She was gorgeous. And look, anything involving Gillian Anderson and vulvas, plural, it's good gay news in my book. Unfortunately, what comes up must come down. And we do have some bad gay news this week. The first is the Taika Waititi show, Our Flag Means Death, which was on Max, has been canceled after 2 seasons. And if you've never watched it or heard of it, I highly recommend recommend it. It's so funny. It's about this wealthy landowner who leaves his wife and children to pursue a life of pirating, and was one of the most queer and inclusive and funny shows out. Now, I have no idea why the show was canceled. I don't know if they gave any reasons as to why this show was canceled, but I don't know. It's just one more queer show down the drain. Now, I do have one more piece of bad gay news this week, which I guess is only bad gay news if you are a huge Jessica Chastain fan and Evelyn Hugo fans. But if you haven't heard, there is an upcoming Netflix film adaptation of the book, The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, in the works, which is about this actress from the golden age of Hollywood named Evelyn Hugo and her seven husbands, which I know doesn't sound very gay, but it is gay. And I read the book a while ago. I liked it, and I'm excited to watch the adaptation. And when it was announced it was getting adapted, everybody on the internet kind of came up with their roster of who they think should play Evelyn and who they thought should be Celia St. James, Evelyn's redheaded love interest. And Jessica Chastain has been like by and far the favorite. Everybody was like, she's going to play Celia St. James. She's perfect. She has red hair. I assume it's just because she has red hair. I don't know. So Jessica has been the front runner for Celia St. James since the adaptation was announced. But recently, Jessica has let everybody know that she, like 1000%, is not starring in the adaptation. So for those of you that had Jessica Chastain in your dream cast list, I guess pour out some liquor. I don't know. And last but not least, I do want to talk very briefly about True Detective Night Country. Quick spoiler alert. I'm not going to go into the plot or anything, but if you don't want to know anything about episode 1, just go ahead and stop the podcast now. So yeah, spoiler alert, get out of here, go on. So the first episode of True Detective Night Country recently aired, and I have thoughts. So I will be making a bonus podcast episode about it. Now, I'll say this much. Did I like the first episode of True Detective Night Country? Yes, I did. Do I think, solely based on the first episode, that Night Country will be the best season of True Detective? I am less inclined to believe that. I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope that at the end of the season, I will have to eat those words, but I don't think so. But anyway, like I said, if you want to know exactly what I thought about the first episode of Night Country, definitely consider joining my Patreon. I believe that is it for this week. I missed you guys. It's been a minute. Happy New Year. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Oh, look what you made me do. Look what you made me do.